So this video comes from someone who's basically done the rounds in figuring out what friendship is and how to make friends, and who's basically known a lot of people and has realized a few things when it comes to, well, first of all, the difference between how to make friends and how to keep friends. Because that's one of the first things I want to talk about in this video. I've known a lot of people in my life. I've spoken to a lot of people. I've had a lot of conversations with people, and I've learned a lot from people, even people that I wouldn't consider close friends and people that I've only ever had maybe one or two or five conversations with them at most. But in my time in reflecting on that and in me trying to give you this advice, I've realized that there is a very big difference in how we approach friendships and how we're meant to approach friendships for the goals that we want to reach. So the first thing I wanted to do a separation on is the difference between making a friend and keeping a friend. Now, in my opinion, making a friend is not that hard. To be honest, all you need to do is just talk to someone and you just basically flip a coin over whether or not you two can get along at the base level. Can you two strike up a conversation? Can you speak about things that you are both interested in? And sometimes it can be that thing where you might be that type of person where even though you're not inherently interested in what another person is saying, you can still give some sort of care and attention to what they're saying. So in that sense, you can basically strike up a conversation, have a really long conversation with them, and it's going to be a conversation that they enjoy. So making a friend isn't that hard. The part that I think we really need to talk about, and I think when it comes to worrying about how we make friends, the part that we're really trying to address is actually keeping a friend. Because to me, that's a choice. And in some cases, it doesn't feel like a very active choice, but I still think that the choice is there. It's just that it's easier for some people to realize it's a choice and to make the choice, but it's harder for other people to realize that they're still making the choice. And with that, I talk about peer pressure. But we're going to get onto that later in the video. When I say the real issue is how to keep a friend, I'm talking about the habit, number one, of maintaining contact with someone, hanging out with them often, and just checking up on them day by day. And I think the reason why this is a bit tough is because if you're like me, you put a lot of expectations on yourself. You put a lot of expectations on the kind of person you want to be, the kind of friend you want to be, and you don't want to be the type of friend that you hate, if that makes sense. If you have an idea of like what kind of friend you would wish to have, you want to be as close to being that kind of friend as possible. But I've gone down that path. I've been through that route for a couple of years now. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but what I will tell you is that you'll quickly realize how hard that actually becomes the older that you get and the more responsibilities that you obtain. Because like I said, I've known a lot of people. Let's say I've met, if I could make an estimation, I've met about 80 people. Of those 80 people, only 2 of those, maybe just one, I would consider a best friend. And again, of those 80 people, probably about 10 of them I would consider friends I could regularly speak to right now. Guys, the idea is you're going to meet a lot of people, and very few of them are going to stay in your inner circle because it takes a lot of time and energy to keep them in your inner circle. Like I said, those earlier habits, speaking with them often, checking up on them, whether it's by text, and meeting up with people physically and physically hanging out, those are pretty difficult things to do. And especially if you're young and you're still in high school, they don't feel as hard because if you're in high school and all of your friends are in your same school, 80% of the work needed to keep a friend is already done for you. If you're in the same class, you're going to see each other every day or every other day because, well, you're in the same classes, you're taking the same tests and all of that, and you're always going to have something in common to talk about, which are the different and similar subjects that you guys are taking, and maybe if you're of that age, the different universities you want to go to. So if you're in that kind of situation, the job is kind of taken care of, 90% of it. But things really do change, and you see this idea that it takes a lot of effort to keep friends, and it's an active choice that you make to keep friends when you guys aren't really close to each other anymore. If you guys are different provinces or cities away from each other, or for those in the US, if you're states away from each other, now that takes a lot more effort because you need to make sure that you keep their number. You need to think about texting them often. I'm not saying every day. I think to some extent there's very few people who can text each other every day. I know that for a lot of my friends, I can't text them every day, but you have to text them often. You have to let them know that, hey, hear me, how are you doing? And things like that. I don't know why I said hear me. I'm multitasking, I guess. But That's just the habitual thing. So if you want to keep your friends, the advice is actually just pretty simple. You just talk to them every single day. You check up on them. You ask them how their day has been going. And if they need you to be somewhere for them, and I'm not talking about physically, but even just emotionally, if they're going through something and they need you to be there for them. You don't have to give a perfect answer. You don't have to give a perfect solution and things like that, but just simply be there for them. Say that, hey, I'm here to listen, whatever they need, do that for them. But now I want to move on to this idea that you have to actually choose the kinds of friends that you make. And I think this is a very important thing to think about. The reason why I say keeping a friend is a choice, again, because it takes a lot of effort. And it's a lot of active effort, especially when you guys are outside of high school and you're talking to people who are very hard to reach, as opposed to the universe making it easy for you. And since you now know that because it takes a lot of effort, you do actively choose to make a friend, you need to choose your friends very carefully. Because growing up, I knew people, and I'm still growing up, and I'm sure I'm going to see a lot of this situation. I know people who say they have a lot of potential and they want to do some really great things in life, but they stick with people who harm that potential and they harm that ideal, or they go against that potential and ideal. Granted, I don't know if they still speak to these people outside of high school and if these friendships will last beyond high school. I would assume not really, because life gets heavy and that's when you start to reflect, to realize, okay, maybe I should stop hanging out with this crowd of people. But while I was still in high school, I knew people who, I don't want to toot my own horn, but to say that they had similar academic acumen to me. They had similar academic drives and just general ambitions about life. The only problem was they chose a pretty tough group of friends to be around, and that basically harmed their circumstances. And now I'm gonna tell you, if you're listening to this video and if you've made it this far, first of all, thank you, and comment anything you want down below and all of that. But now I'm going to tell you that you need to understand and accept that the kinds of friends that you make are going to be very important, not only to you, in the sense that they give you emotional security, they give you a friendship, for lack of a better term, but because also they're gonna take a lot of energy, especially if you do want to keep them. If you want to keep your friends, you're going to spend a lot of energy. You're basically going to have to, like I was alluding to earlier, treat them in a way that you would want to be treated by a friend. Because, I don't know, we set expectations on ourselves and we don't want to be disappointing. Because maybe we fall into the trap of thinking about, I can't deserve this kind of friend who does this for me, who does that for me, and all of that if I don't do that to my friends. And to some extent, I think that's true. And it's a kind of lifestyle that I want to live. But again, as I've gotten older, I've realized how much more difficult it is to be the perfect friend, especially if you do have multiple. So this part is a bit, I don't want to say underwhelming, but undercooked, because I was hoping to spend a bit more time on it, but if I do, I'm just going to repeat myself. It just boils down to that thing of making a friend is not that hard. You just walk up to someone, you speak to them, and it's basically like a lot of things in life. There's no certainty, there's no guarantee. It's a flip of a coin whether you two can basically get a click off, if you two can have something in common, if you can have an entertaining conversation and dig each other's vibes, and if you do, then you start a friendship. And if you haven't, and they don't like you for whatever reason, or if they reject you unfairly or whatever, then you just move on to the next phase. I think that's also something that we forget to think about when it comes to relationships with our fellow human beings. We forget that there isn't an obligation for someone to say yes to being a friend to us. It's not like a video game where we can just keep retrying and there is a certain path to success and success is coded into the system. I don't think that's how real life works. That's not how people work. If someone doesn't want to be a friend with you, it doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with you. If there is, then that's a completely different story, and that has its own implications and its own ways of solving that problem. But when it comes to just a rejection on a face value, it doesn't mean that you've lost value as a human being. You don't have to say yes to being friends with everyone, and not everyone has to say yes to being friends with you. So that's also something that I do want to say to close off this bit of advice. And also, I guess it just basically seeped into me just saying, guys, choose your friends very wisely. Because again, they take a lot of energy from you. And if you want to keep your friends, just it's the little things that are easy to forget, I think, like texting someone every day or texting them as often as you can, responding to them, just interacting with them. But doing these little things as often as possible lets people know that, hey, you care about me, you're here, and you want to keep being friends with me, and I'll remember that. And then they get to do with that what they will. But for now, when it comes to just chatting about that, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys did enjoy this one. I hope you found value. And if you did, please do leave a like. It would make me smile and make me very happy and make me consider you a friend. But if you don't want to, there's no need. I'm sure there's going to be another video to convince you to do that. But until I see you there, have a wonderful day.
Kilman concedes a free kick for that.